So we are back with another fun, pretty easy project. This is a new line of fabric from Hoffman Fabrics called Marbled, and we've mixed in some other prints, but the marbled itself is just, it's really quite pretty. It's a digitally printed piece, I believe, of marble, so it looks like a piece of marble. So when this came through the studio, both Matthew and I designed a project with this, and the first project we're going to use Marbled for is the one that Matthew designed, and that is called A True Classic. It is a Greek temple, so that we're utilizing the marble as a building material in the quilt. So I'm really excited to see how this turns out. Alright, we are all cut and ready to start assembling our Greek temple. First step is to sew the triangles. We're going to sew these together along the diagonal, and it should go point to point, and then we're going to trim it to the correct size that we need. Alright, so to sew and trim our two pieces of our roof, I have put the two triangles together, and I did start with the point at the one end and the point at the other. Even though I know it's not going to get caught in the seam, we're going to trim this up. So that is how you lay those two together. Then you press it, I'm pressing it towards the building, not the sky. And then we're going to trim this to 6.5 by 21 3/4. So if you were to lay this down right where the sky meets the point, and don't worry about the gray until we trim the 6.5 up. So you want them right at that point. If you go over here and you trim, it'll be 21 3/4 is right there. So we're going to trim this excess off. Turn it around and do 21 3/4. So you start at the roof peak and trim down over here. And there's our roof peak and our other roof peak, and we're just going to sew the two together. You want to make sure this is 6.5. It should measure out. Well, not quite. So we're going to trim this up. Always check before you cut. There we go. So there's that piece. Now we're going to sew this piece on, and that will give us our angled roof. So we are going to sew one of these strips, which is C, or I'm sorry, this is D, one of D's to the one of E's. That'll make one strip set, and then we'll repeat to make a second strip set. Then we're going to cut this into segments to create the unit ones that we will then put together to make the columns at the very top of the temple. So let me get these sewn and pressed. Alright, so we've got our two strip sets sewn, and now we're going to cut these into 13 3.5-inch units. So you can stack them up and cut them at the same time. If you're fairly new to quilting, I would probably say cut them one at a time. I am going to put them right sides together. And if you make it nice and nest them together and make it nice and flat, it makes it easier to cut it. You're going to square off the end and then cut 3.5-inch segments. And make sure you're using the ruler the right way. I cut all these too long, which is better than too short. So we've got all of these, and we want to make sure that the D is first. And we're going to sew them together like this. So the way we've already cut this, if you sew it with the D on top, we'll have them already all stacked in order. So we're going to sew those together into pairs, and then sew the pairs together, create this long strip with this on the end. So we have all our units sewn together, and then I only needed one of those, not two. But that is the top column of the marble with the stone in between. Now we're going to do our steps unit. So let's put this aside with our roof unit. So I've sewn these strips together, and I've sewn them together. I want to show you on a diagonal. So how to do that is you put the strips at a right angle and you sew from upper left to lower right, and then it flips out and you have a diagonal seam. This is going to be much less noticeable than a straight seam, and that's the only reason we do it. And you're going to trim the excess fabric, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance in the back, and then you'll press it. Then we can go ahead and cut these strips. And we don't want this at the end of our steps, so when we cut this, we will fold it in half and then just slide the seam down a little bit so it's about here, and then just cut it by dividing what we need. This one needs to be 49 divided by 2, which tonight I'm just not able to do math, is 24.5. So then we can use our ruler and trim it. Just make sure the fold is at the other end. And then those are gone. And the seam is not at the end, it's not in the middle, it's kind of off the center, so it's going to be much less noticeable than if I did it right here or I did it at the end. So that is this strip, and this one gets this. And then we're just going to repeat with the other two. And then this last one does not get anything sewn on the ends, we just need to cut it to length. And this one is 52 inches, which is 26, but I'm double checking. And my ruler's not long enough. I'm going to use a tape measure for this one. And again, I would recommend pressing this before you trim them. I'm just doing it to show you guys so that we can keep moving forward. I'll take it over and press it here once I sew the ends on. So you put the tape measure on the fold. There's 26. And that's going to be the bottom step. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these little gray bits on and press these seams, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got these all pressed, and then I've sewn the little gray square, the little gray rectangle, so this creates the edge of the steps. So now we just sew these 4 rows together, and that'll be the base of the temple. And due to their length, I would definitely recommend pinning these and not just sew them, because you can gather excess fabric in there. So I'm going to grab my pins, we're going to get these pinned up and sewn, and we will have a temple base. So here are our temple steps all sewn. So we're going to put these in the pile of parts to our temple. And next up is the columns. So we're going to make these units, and then these units get sewn with these to create the columns. So let's do the columns first. So you need to sew 2 of these. You get to sew a light on one side. All of them get dark on the other side, and then the other ones, because there's 5, I think, 2, 4, 6. So 2 get light and 4 get dark. 4. So these will get sewn on one side, these will get sewn on the other. Again, it's longer than 12 inches. I'd probably pin and pin. Once you get these sewn on, you're going to sew one of these on each side. So I will come back with our columns all sewn. So we have our columns all sewn now, and I want to show you, I'm going to go back to this piece here. When you're piecing your temple, it's a very little thing and it really doesn't matter, but to me, I think it'll look better. I press towards the rose marble every time, and what that'll do is make that piece prominent and this piece sink back. So I went back and I repressed this guy so that I did it on there. And then now we have our columns done. Now we're really starting to see a temple coming together. I press towards the rose, and then I press towards the top and the bottom, because again, the top and the bottom come in front of the column if you were to look at a real building. So we have the one side and the other side, and then we have the interior ones. So the next step, to give us some room here, is to take the B2 20-inch pieces, and they're going to get sewn in between to give us our space between the columns. So I'm going to sew those together to create the column rows, and then at the very end on either side gets a another 1-inch strip of the sky to make the column ends pop out. We'll have this section sewn. So we have the roof done, we have the set in mini columns, the tall columns done, we have our steps done. Then we're going to be ready to just start building the temple. So now, as you can see, we have all our columns sewn. It's starting to take the shape of our temple. So the next step is to sew at the top. First, this strip of D, and then this piece here. And then once those two are on, we're going to sew another piece of sky down each side like that. So I'm going to go ahead and sew those pieces on, and next up is going to be the roof. So here we are. We've got our columns, our top, and then our smaller columns at the top of there. So the next step is to sew this brown marble at the top, and I'm going to need to piece it and cut it to length, which I will do next. And then we get to sew our roof on. We now have the top on, and the little columns, and the strip, and now the roof. So there is the temple all put together. We still need to add the dark marble inner border and then the top and bottom tile borders, which I'll do next. But I just want to show you what it looks like without the borders. And you can see the steps and columns. And then our roof, notice the rooftop does not have a point, it is a flat top, so don't worry about that if that happens on yours. And there we are, that's the temple. So I'll show you the quilt top once we get the borders on. So here is our true classic quilt top all done with the last two borders added. We're going to send this off to Monica to have it quilted, and we will take a look at it when it comes back. I'm going to zoom in here just so you can see the last, how it all looks together. And again, that marbled fabric is just so pretty, and that's from Hoffman Fabrics. So I'll be back when it's quilted. Here is our quilt back from the quilter, a true classic featuring marbled from Hoffman Fabrics. We just got it finished. We really weren't sure how to quilt this. There was a lot of different ways you could go. You could do some really cool custom quilt on this pattern. As usual, we were under a time constraint, so she really only had like 2 days to quilt this. And what Monica did is she went in and she followed the textures of the marble in the fabric. So she made the whole thing just sort of feel like craggly marble, which just accentuates this beautiful fabric from Hoffman Fabrics. And then she put clouds behind the temple, just some clouds. And she did some outlining on the pieces. Sorry for the shadows. So here it is. This one was designed by Matthew, which is kind of fitting, seeing how he is an architect as well as a partner in our company. I hope you've enjoyed our tutorial on this very easy quilt. The only angles were in the roof. Everything else was straight seams. Super, super fun. It is a great way to showcase this beautiful marble fabric from Hoffman Fabrics. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe below, and I thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, TheWhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.